Okay, good morning. For those who are dialing in, thanks for joining. So I don't have presentation this week, so we'll straight away go to the Slido questions. I saw that there's still long list of questions. Maybe more will come later. Today YCX is here with me, so I think we will co-host this together. So I would assume that all these questions are asking you as well. Okay. The first question is: I see many influencers suddenly pumping China stocks again. Can buy? YCX, your opinion?
I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not buying at the moment, and the 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 key thing that I see over here is more of like it's still kind of a wait and see attitude by most people who are on the sidelines because it's quite uncertain on um. I mean, it's a partly it's two things. One is that people are uncertain on the situation in China because you have to understand that there has been a lot of money being poured in, right, to develop China as a like kind of like a competitor or a global manufacturing hub, and not all the money is efficiently allocated, which means that there is the possibility that there's a lot of like from an investor perspective, right? There is a possibility that there's a lot of dead money at the moment that is just looking for a way out or something, and then they're just waiting for that lah. So a lot of it could be that the money is there are people who are having dead money inside that they want to get out, and that's why they do that. So they try to pump it up or things like that lor.
Yeah.
So that is one, that is from a perspective that I see lah. The other perspective that it is that you can see from recent news, right? I mean, you see the trend. You look at a lot of those Business Insider, Bloomberg, whatever it is. They have been cranking up the anti-China, anti-C kind of propaganda pieces. Like whatever thing that China does, they can write it in such a way that it looks like it is bad like that. So that is one of the issues, because the investors are also like influenced by this propaganda lah. That like recently there's this article by Bloomberg again that they write something like that the Chinese banks are studying the seas ports or whatever things like that. That you think about it is actually very similar to like how other countries have their own industry leaders studying what the government is putting out. It's just like Singapore has people studying what like the real estate market is going to be like. What does the new property tax, new ABSD, new kind of schemes mean? Whatever. It's very natural, but Bloomberg writes it in such a way that it looks like it is bad like that. Like what's the Chinese banker supposed to do? Ignore the China government mandates? No, right? Obviously, they will want to follow it or they're doing business in the area. So that is the issue with China that I'm seeing happening right now. Yeah.
But all these, right, all these trend, like they're trashing US side, they're trashing China also because the relationship between China and US are already deteriorated, and then there's no sign of improvement as of now. And I think just recently, Biden announced something that they're going to, like stop all this investment into Chinese technology, especially those that are sensitive, those that can be used for the defense, right? So all these are still ongoing, and then on top of that, there's still, I think the new one is that maybe I think US side they will try to do something on the index just to prevent more money flow into China. Because, for example, if you just go totally passive, right? So for example, like all these call it like MSCI index or some other index, right? And via all these big funds company like BlackRock, Vanguard, some of them get into China. If you go through like passive route or investment, meaning that all this money get into China, they won't go and target specific companies, right? They will just own everything, right? And when you own everything, some of this money will flow into some companies that may be doing something that help with the China defense industry. Okay, so the questions now is that will US do more like preventing money to flow into China? Because if yes, right, they keep trashing it, and then they do all these, like new regulations to extract money out of China, or blocking more money flow into China. What it means is that China as a geography will not rebound, at least over the short term. But what do you think about these few points?
Yeah, I think you brought out some very good points. I think all these are true, in the sense that we have to understand that the US, or rather the West side, right, has the best propaganda machine in the world. They have the best media control, and a lot of all these things is kind of like they are moving the Overton window, like they cannot, like, it's just like, because the West operates on a model of like free market capitalism, so they cannot really just introduce like sweeping statements, like, say, for example, the index cannot have Chinese companies or have Chinese relations kind of things. They have to do it like bit by bit. So of course they will have these, like, the government put out some kind of small restriction here, and then they will have like some kind of like news here and there to try to influence the public opinion, and then they make it look a bit acceptable to do this and that, and then they just keep pushing a bit and pushing a bit, and it doesn't seem like they are stopping on this push at the moment. I mean, there have been like meetings by the top US and Chinese officials and things, but it's kind of still a bit of hit and miss. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, and nothing really concrete happens out of it. It could be just that they are just discussing the rules of the game that they are playing, and and that kind of things. So I agree with totally what you say, that the index might just reduce coverage of these Chinese funds and things. So if you have like a reduction in all these index, naturally the gaining source for that is, in terms of like the gaining power of the investment from stocks for the index, right, is gone. So you have to rely more on like the fundamentals. There's less of the momentum, and there's less of like in a sense, you are in the over the longer term, you are also less influenced by the US monetary policy, which can be good and bad depending on what the foreign exchange rate is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think all these things that they do on the policy side, right, I think still I'll consider as a short-term concern, because whatever they do on the index, and then it will affect the sentiment. So all this is like good trading, kind of bet now, if for those who want to bet on that. But from long-term perspective, I think this is I could actually frame it like this is the good time to buy, right? Because everyone is trashing them. So if you can see past, let's say, quite like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? Just talking about like longer term, right? Actually, it's a good time to buy now, right? Because there's not much has been priced into the valuation, because whether you look at it on like a geopolitical lens, or you look at it from, let's say, like the fundamentals, right? They are not super good. The fundamentals part is also because of the policy, and also because there's all this excitement already kind of like died down a bit. So nothing much has been priced into it. So, but yet those strong companies Alibaba just announced their earnings, right? I look at their free cash flow is still like, over 20 billion US dollar per year kind of level. There's a couple of quarters that they dip, and then now it seems like there's some recovery also. So you can just like, get some exposure and just wait this out now. I mean, for longer terms, it's still a good investment, right? So I'm curious, like YCX, I don't think you have huge allocations into China, but maybe you have some small positions here and there. Are you okay to share some of your positions specifically on China side?
I don't actually have any positions in like direct China right now, but what I'm actually, in a sense, you can see from the US side, Baba is kind of like the representation of China already. I mean, from most investors' point of view, and also from the retail point of view, Baba is kind of that. Yeah. The thing is that when I look at it, I I kind of look at like the inclusive of everything that I said just now. I feel like yes, Baba could be a good buy now, but I'm not personally buying into it because I don't think that the way it's structured right now is kind of mo it's kind of multi yeah, that's the issue that I have with it because I can't see like how the mode is going to be built up right now. The previously the Baba of old, the Baba that I bought at that $240 range, then dropped to 210, that range, right? Back then the Baba was actually very, very, very strong. Then as you know, over the past 2 years, the government happened and Baba is now like split up into many different things and have a lot of like I can't see like a coherent like kind of like picture in terms of like how all its arms will work together to to dominate a certain part of the industry, and that is the main issue that I have with it. That the previous thing that attracted me in which that they had that kind of monopoly power and ability to innovate in all areas to compete, right? Is kind of like not as strong right now. Or rather, they have to be careful on like whatever that they do, they cannot step out of their boundaries or they might get beaten down again. That is my issue with buying something like Baba. Because if you think about it, Baba's um Baba's main business, right? E-commerce and the cloud, these kind of things, it's not really that if you don't have that kind of monopoly power I mean, that kind of ability to monopolize things, it is not very, it's not a very strong mode kind of area to me. Because essentially you become like a service provider, like, like an internet service provider like that. You provide all these kind of things, but then people, when they look at your prices and they think that your prices are too high or whatever, they can still switch to a competitor of yours so long as a competitor of yours exists. And since under the government right now, they have so many competitors, JD, whatever, Pinduoduo or whatever, they can just, okay, fine, I don't want to do Baba's business. Maybe Baba charges me 30% cut. I'll go and do JD business, which charges me 20% cut. Oh, okay, then I just do JD business, that kind of thing. Or maybe I just ask, or maybe I just do both as a business, but then I spend more effort on my JD side of the marketing and things too, because it charges me less of a cut. That kind of issue, that is my main deal with it, because one of the reasons is the fundamentals have changed to me. It's not just about the money not going in, it's also the fundamentals change when it comes to Baba. What I'm actually looking out for is actually more of like in China, right? What kind of business would be good in the sense that they are quite high domestic consumption base, so that they are less influenced by export measures that might that the West might just impose on China at any point in time. And typically, this kind of hard to import restrictions. I mean, hard to restrict the exports or imports one, or hard to restrict consumption one, right? Is usually the those kind of media content, like like South Korea, kind of like K-pop, this kind of things, right? It's very difficult to restrict, and from the West perspective, it's very difficult to restrict. But then from the Chinese perspective, it seems like the government might just shut it down if they think that it's too addictive or whatever things. So again, there's a dilemma over there. So whole thing is also that the Chinese government is still very restrictive in terms of what people can and cannot do. Like you see recently, they also have some kind of news on that the youth cannot use more than 1 hour of internet or whatever kind of nonsense. All these are all issues to me that I find is not very good from a capitalist perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. I think a lot of dilemma. There's no clear path, right? That's why people also get worried on all these trends. Okay, come back to the questions, right? So the questions here is say that I see many influencers suddenly pumping China stocks again. I think for those whoever asking these questions or those who tuning in, right? I think if you are already consuming content on YouTube or any other platforms, right? You follow certain, you can call it influencer or content creator, doesn't matter, right? So you know that their stance, right? So I would say for those, for example, like my friend Chicken, right? He has been, producing Alibaba contents for consistently for so long, right? So if he continue to keep on pumping China, to me that's just like him being consistent, right? So I think you can continue to consume this kind of content and then see whether you agree with his view or not. But I will caution against those influencers that keep on flip-flopping. Say for example, if someone say that China is not investable in let's say late last year, then now suddenly because the sentiment has changed a little bit and then start to pumping again. I think those flip-flopping one, you might want to be more cautious because, for example, let's say the sentiment turns south again, then it will be the same person that come in and say, oh, it's not investable. So you're getting being played or being influenced usually at the wrong time now. When everyone's scared, then the content creator gets scared, then you scared together. No use these kind of things. I would say have to understand the track record and see what the content creators view in the past to see whether it's worth listening or not. Those flip-flopping one, I think can ignore. At least that's my view. Okay. Do you have any opinions on this, talking about the influencer side? YCX?
No.
Okay, then let's move on to the next questions. Cover the market strategy of luxury brand companies and why so many rise and fall over time. What caused them and how to sustain them? Okay, this one actually I don't have much view on luxury brand. I think someone tend to ask question a few times, but in this platform here, but I don't have a strong view on this. So over to YCX if you have any viewpoint on this.
I'm not quite sure also, but I think it's like, the only observation I can see is that those luxury brands that really make it are those that do a lot of competitive acquisitions. Like they just buy over a lot of other brands as well. So I think it's a bit of a hit and a miss kind of thing. I'm not sure exactly because I'm sure everyone who live quite a while will see that brands come and go all the time. Like some brand could be in the fashion like these 4-5 years, and then after that you see that it just totally disappeared or something. And it's just that like for like luxury brands, it's just that kind of feeling. Like I'm not sure exactly actually. Yeah, that's what I can say.
Yep. Actually, on this topic, right? Yesterday I just watched a video. I think it's a 1 hour speech by this Professor Scott Galloway. I think the guy he's a professor and he wrote the book The Fall. So some of his viewpoints are quite interesting. Although he keep on making prediction, people laugh at him being wrong at his prediction. But still, I think quite interesting. On this luxury brand, right? Actually, he used the word like artificial scarcity to describe the luxury brands or luxury businesses because for example like all these LV bags or like those super expensive one, right? It's not like they cannot produce more and just get even more revenues and more profits, right? It's just that they purposely limit the quantity so that there's this prestige to the brand because if everyone can afford LV bags, then it will worth a lot less, right? So and the entire thesis of this luxury business is that the income inequality is getting more serious, like compared to let's say just 10 years ago. For example, like how many percent of the net worth, right, actually accrued to the top call it like 1%, right? Actually, it's getting a lot higher, the percentage. That's why there will be a lot of all these business that really tailored for the top 1% instead of like the call it the middle class, right? So I think it's quite interesting. At least it described the entire macro or why people are interested to invest in this luxury brand, because there's a lot of like profit margins here, and all these are artificial one. And it works, right? As long as it works, it helps the companies earn big money. Still a good business to own, right? At least that's the thesis now. But for me, I'm not into luxury business because I don't understand. I haven't really researched a lot on this area, and yeah, I just not interested now. I myself also don't use a luxury brand items, so really it's like clueless on this area, so I'll stay away from giving too much opinions. But I'll link the video in the descriptions. You can have a look for those who are interested to find out more on these topics now. So let's go to the next one. Hello, Bunti. Can you please make the Telegram group private instead of public, because Telegram banned me chatting inside the public group? So I think this one, just to clarify, right? My Telegram group, like we used to like chat a lot in this group, right? It is always private. It has never been public. So the friend that texts me on this is that he got some problem with his account now, so he can't really post text in the group. So I think that's something that he need to sort out. But with problem with Telegram is that if you talk to customer service, also very hard to nobody will come and assist you. So I think the fastest way to address this problem is just to create another account so that you can participate in the discussions now. For those who are tuning in like the first time, right, you don't know about this Telegram group, the link is always at the description. You can click and then join the Telegram group. Usually I will text you now. I'll come and text you just to make sure that you're human, and then just say hi to me, and I'll admit you to the groups. So this is a bit like promo for the Telegram group. Okay, let's move to the next one. Do you agree companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google will never fall since we use their products every day and everyone is using them? Okay, I want to listen to YCX opinion on this first, then I'll comment on this. YCX?
You can see from there's usually two ways this can go. One way is, they will not fall and they will continue to dominate. The other way is that they could fade into the background. People still use them, but then they are no longer the dominant thing that people talk about. The interest is no longer on them. So one way to look at this is that you can see that there are those in the past, maybe during the 1960s to 90s, like that, right? The computing industry wasn't the biggest yet. Rather, the where the money was made was in like selling like TVs and also like watching cable TV, that kind of things. Like there's a lot of money to be made in those kind of cable TV and watching TV channels. And you can see that during that point in time, you also think that, hey, these TV content companies are big, like that when they put out their things, like millions of people watch every day. Is like literally their only form of entertainment, and whatever that we put on it, advertising and things, the whole market is going to see it, because they are the TV channel. There's only so many TV channels during that time, and taking out like the primetime hours and things. Then you can kind of see that over time, when like the computing took up, personal computer took up, all these kind of areas, they start to matter less and less. Like right now, is there even something called prime time watching, that kind of things? Is getting less, but like you don't see the kind of engagement or numbers that, I mean, in terms of percentage of population that is engaged to that. There's that whole thing there, but yet you see that the TV is still there, the TV industry is still there, and these channels are still there. It's just that lesser people watch them, and they are no longer the dominant thing right now. It's just like, Straits Times, that kind of newspaper is still there, and people still acknowledge it as like the a brand in Singapore that is very big and whatever lah. But then nobody talks about like Straits Times like it is like the dominant thing anymore lah. It's just another service from a sunset industry kind of thing. So you can still be dominant in a sunset industry, but you don't expect it to be that kind of usage. That means like people continue using them, but then will never fall. In the sense, they kind of have fallen if they become a sunset industry. So the the key thing about Apple, Microsoft, and Google is that if you look at them, they actually spend a lot on R&D. And not only that, they have a strategy in which that because they are in the tech industry and compared to a lot of other industries, right? Tech is relatively capex low. That means that they are very asset light. They can spend a lot on R&D, right? Because they don't the content that they produce doesn't require a lot of machinery to do, or even if it does, they kind of like have either pass the cost over to somewhere else or whatever it is. That one is a topic for another time. But because they can spend so much on R&D, right? They have an advantage over there in that they can see whatever trend comes up and they can afford to experiment with whatever trend and see if there's any way to integrate into their own products and services. And that is one of the reasons why tech is one of the most adaptable industries. Yeah, but you look at it in this way, right? You can also see that it's not every tech company that has survived, because you can see IBM has been IBM was very big in the 1970s to 1990s, right? They were literally like the Microsoft of now. But then their strategy can still be taken over by Microsoft. Over time, when Microsoft managed to commoditize what IBM does, and then make it so that Microsoft became the dominant crux in the tech platform kind of things. So it's a matter of execution, and it's also a matter of like how the management, you kind of have to kind of see how the management of all these companies, right, respond to trends, and also how they try to carve out their space in all these trends. It's not just because it's used and it will no longer is forever used. It is no longer going to be going out of business kind of thing. Because absolutely that the nexus point of the tech, right, can move one. I mean, right now you can kind of see that, let's say for the Apple ecosystem, the nexus point of the tech is at where? Is at Apple itself. You have the App Store, you have the hardware, that kind of things. But you can kind of see if, let's say, there are certain rules or whatever that pushed it out, right? Like say Apple is no longer allowed to just dominate its App Store, or like Apple's phones become like open spec. People can build it as long as they conform to the Apple specifications. It can use the Apple iOS kind of platform, that kind of thing. Then you can kind of see that over time that nexus point might shift and Apple might lose its dominance. So it depends on how each company maintain that nexus point, right? So that they capture the profits at that point. Because it's kind of like a whole supply chain kind of thing, whereby it is a zero-sum game, because the end product is the phone, or the end product is whatever the consumer is using, and the consumer has X amount of money, and for the entire supply chain to capture the X amount of money, it is a zero-sum game, because the X amount of money is just that. But then if you are the nexus point, you manage to capture most of the X amount of money, while the others along the supply chain get less of it. So that is how they try to play that game. Yeah.
Thanks for the detailed commentary on this. Okay, now I'm thinking, because just now you mentioned about IBM, all this, like even the cable TV. I think that's quite interesting. They were, they are industry that were quite dominant in the past, and then now just really either in the sunset industry or already disrupted and become irrelevant, right? But I think we sometimes we don't have to look into that far, because if you talk about like 70s, 80s, 90s, that was like too many years ago, right? But we can look at something that is more recent. Say for example, right, in the we can call it like in the 90s, 2000s, that's the PC era, right? And then we know that this entire shift into mobile phones, right, it's not that long ago. It was just like, call it like 10 years, in the past 10 years, right? So then this entire, all this compute, all this, how we consume content and so on, it just moved from desktop to phone. And you can see that Microsoft, before Satya Nadella took over, right? Actually, you can see that Microsoft is already disrupted by Apple, because they lose out in terms of the shift to the mobile platforms, right? They tried to acquire the Windows, do this all the Windows Phone and so on, didn't succeed, right? So, and Apple and Android really took over the entire, the mobile phone industry. So you can see that there's even player as strong as Microsoft also can be disrupted when there's a huge shift to the new platform. The question now is that, okay, if you are talking about like mobile, you talk about PC, I think all these companies that we all like mentioned here, right? Apple, Microsoft, Google, they will still be dominant. So the question is, will there be another shift to a new platforms, and how will the new platforms look like, right? This is the questions that people are interested, because whenever you have a new platforms, then it's kind of like a level playing field, and everyone can grab the new shares, right? And one of the, the famous one, it will be the metaverse, right? So that's why Meta has been investing so much money into the metaverse, because he believes that will be the new platforms that he is able to compete. Because it's very hard for him to for Meta to come up with a phones, come up with a new platform or ecosystem to fight with Apple and Android, because it's not a growth industry anymore. But then for metaverse, it will be a new area to go for. I don't think metaverse will be a very big, but there will be other platforms. It could be something related to like the AI or ChatGPT, these kind of things, right? Or you can just watch the movie Her, right? I think that movie, the name is Her. See how let's say like an AI can operate like a assistance, and this one itself can be already a new platforms that shift everything from the mobiles, right? So I think my sense is that if we are talking about the matured mature platforms, the dominant one will stay dominant. But the platforms will not be stagnant over time. Every, call it like 10 to 20 years, there will be another shift. Then the old one will still, they will still be dominant in the old platforms, but that one will die down. Like for example, now if you look at PC, right? The sales isn't like very, very high number. It's like, growing at low single digits, like on average. Then during recession, it can drop by 10, 20%, right? Then during good time, it can go up by, call it like 10, 15%. So over the long term, right, the growth rate won't be high, because people already move on to the new platforms already. And now even mobile phone platforms also has been slowing down. So I don't know how much of this slowdown is like short term, but some of them could be more structural, because people are prepared to get into the new platforms, because anyway, mobile platform has been around for like 10 years already. Not many companies will want to invest a lot in mobile phones market to reinvent the whole things, right? So I think that's my sense. So for those who investing in tech companies, I think you just need to be observant, see what's the trend, the new trend. Say for example, now people talking about AI. Like if you look at 1 year, 2 years, maybe there's a lot of hype in there. But then I believe that this AI technology coupled with like new things that will be coming soon, right? It will build the next platforms, and next platform is the one that grow the entire economy moving forwards. Whereas for mobile phones, it is quite saturated for now. But good thing about saturation is that there's not much incentive for new players to come and grab the market shares. It's very hard to do so. So I would say if you just want to bet on this area, right? Like talking about mobile phone, you think that this mobile phone will stay on for some time, right? Then Apple, Google, with Android, right? They will stay lah. So that's my thought on this. But come back to the questions here again, right? Is it true that they will never fall? I would say no lah, because even let's say imagine, right, when Microsoft was very dominant in the PC market and entire big shift towards the mobile market, right? You can also see that Microsoft struggled for quite a number of years. The stock price only come back after the shift in the the strategy towards cloud, and Azure has been executing so very good, right? You can look at their results. That's the cloud business, and this shift to mobile is the one that actually bring them back. Without this, right, they already lose out in mobile phone market already. So I won't be so confident to say that they will never fall. I would say that, like what YCX mentioned, right, they are still reinvesting heavily to make sure they stay at the forefront, but doesn't mean that they will always be there. There's always disruption coming from all angles, and all these trend of technologies, right, also keep changing, man. So don't be so confident, still need to monitor whether they are slacking or not. Another example is, of course, Intel, right? Intel, they have been dominant in the semicon industry for so many years. Even a company that invented the semicon industry also can disrupted, right? So these companies, yes, they are very strong now, but doesn't mean that they can't be disrupted now. And my last point is that I think for companies that own the platforms, right, is that they are not owning a single product. They are owning the platforms and owning the ecosystem, right? Like, for example, Apple, they have all this iOS ecosystem. Microsoft have the the Windows platform. Companies that own the platform and ecosystems, right, will be more durable in terms of their moat. I think that's my last point. It's not as easy to disrupt this kind of companies, but nothing is impossible. Okay, that's my point on these questions. You want to add anything, YCX? If not, we move on.
Yeah, move on. I'll add on the next one.
All right. LK people will suffer without iPhone because they are used to it. People cannot do business without Microsoft. People will be stupid without Google and Android. What is LK, by the way?
Your dominant companies, right? Like Apple, Microsoft, all these, they maintain their lead. Their chokehold is that they mainly there's two types of strategies. One is, as you will call, like Microsoft will call it the triple E strategy, which is embrace, extend, extinguish, which is that they just, or you can call it vertical integration, whatever way you want to call it. But basically is that the most famous example is with Netscape and Lotus, whereby they know these are the killer apps of their time. Then they release a version of it that is better in every way. And then they slowly try to shutter off by putting up the better product over there, that kind of things, right? And then they choke off the other side. And then they become they kind of take over this entire field. Then that is like the vertical integration or the triple E strat. The other way would be that the other competing way is that they try to commoditize their complements. So if you look at it like you are using a Windows or you're using an Apple phone product, but then the Apple phone itself is just that, but is the apps on it that kind of like makes you want to use it, right? So maybe you're using like certain kind of apps that's on there that you find it very useful. But then what the platform owner wants to do is that they try to commoditize it. That means they want to encourage more apps that do what you do to put on their platform, so that your platform does not become the killer app, right? That defines their platform. Because if your app becomes like the killer app, right, that defines their platform, and the moment you shift out your app, people might follow the app out of the platform. That is the issue, because your app becomes the platform. So it's a matter of maintaining that focal point, right? That I said the nexus must be on your platform, and that if there are all these things that are coming up, you have to find some way to maybe you can also see it in the geopolitics kind of sense. Like US looks at China and thinks that China is getting big. So what does the US do? The US try to work with the smaller countries or the next few bigger countries, right? To try to cut down on the lead of China in terms of what it does well and things. So that the number one position will always maintain the number one position. That kind of idea. It's the same that's happening for all these platforms thing, which is that they see that there's an app that's getting too strong. They don't want that to happen. There's two ways that they do it. One is that either they buy over the company or they create some kind of competitor that's better because it better than a company. Or the other way would be that they start to release a lot of like, free software, like I'm going to make free things, like I'm going to make this free or make that free, and then come and use our free product. Why you want you go for the paid product? Just use our free product that is already built into the platform or whatever it is. And then you have that lah. Then that way they try to disrupt the market that the killer app or whatever is doing, and it can work the same way upwards. It's not just downwards. Of course, downwards is easier, but it can work the same way upwards. So upwards would be that the supplier becomes reliant on the order, because the supplier becomes heavily reliant on the order, such that the supplier no longer has the kind of market pricing power, because the purchaser is can always say, if you don't do it for me in this way, then I will switch to another supplier, that kind of things. So it's how you maintain that. I'm not talking about like say you starting out in a startup or whatever industry and getting to this point. I'm talking about like all these kind of like already entrenched systems, right? Already entrenched companies. This is what, from investor perspective, we should be looking out for in terms of like what the company is doing to extend and maintain its chokehold on the market. Because these platform companies, is a given that they are profitable. There's no question there. It's a matter of like right now is you're not investing in it because it's profitable this year or the next year or things. You're investing in it because you are trying to see whether this company is going to be profitable over the next 5 to 10 to 20 years. And that really depends on how the management execute these kind of things, right? To maintain its supernormal profit ability by ensuring that everything revolves around them. It cannot be that it's the center of the world cannot be some other thing along the way, because the moment it shifts to some other thing along the way, right, then they lose out on their ability to determine the market profits, where it goes to. So that is the key thing when looking at all these big caps that have already reached the kind of like supernova stage, is where they can continue sucking in the surrounding like star systems, right, to sustain it and not let any other star system become so big that it becomes a competitor for them.
Yeah, I think this one quite interesting because I recently I've been reading this Steve Jobs autobiography, right? There's a lot of like small stories here and there, but some of these stories really highlight like how much they've been doing to really maintain, to make sure that the platforms, that they truly own the platforms. So I'll give one examples between Apple in the initial years working with like all these news publishers like New York Times and other newspapers, because all these newspapers, they know that the print business, right, is going downhill, so they need to go digital. They knew that even like quite 10 years ago. So and they know that accessing the digital like news, right, over browser, it doesn't provide a good experience. So they want to like create their own apps, make it really optimized for the apps, right? Like the iOS and so on. So then it will be very attractive, right? To help them with the digitalizations. Then now come with the subscriptions, because of course all this is not free, right? It's not like they're offering free apps. You have to subscribe to access to like New York Times. Then the question is, right, when the customer get into the apps and then subscribe to New York Times, like every month you just pay quite like $10, right? Does New York Times actually get to store the customer's credit card and information or not? Because actually when you subscribe, you don't go direct, right? You actually subscribe through iOS, like you using your Apple ID, and then just go to the New York Times. So there's a lot of debate between Steve Jobs and the CEO of the New York Times back then to say that, okay, actually, like the New York Times, they say that they actually want the data. They want to know who subscribed to their newspaper or this digital subscription, so that let's say one day they want to move up, they can bring all this data and can tell their customers, say, oh, we are now out of iOS. If you want to continue to subscribe to us, you continue to pay us in other platforms, right? And when it comes to Apple, they really, really fight a lot to make sure that this doesn't happen. They say, okay, all this has to do with, like customer privacy, data privacy, and so on. They are not going to hand this data over to New York Times. They're happy for New York Times to stay in iOS, to continue to receive, let's say, like every $1, they will get New York Times can get 70 cents. Apple just get the 30 cents, but the data always stay with Apple. That's why it's very hard for all these businesses to move out. So actually, who own the customer in this case, right, is really come back to Apple, because they really safeguard it. They don't allow these kind of things to happen. So this one has been, when they have all these discussion and negotiations, right, you can tell, like actually New York Times needed Apple more than Apple needed New York Times. So that's why when they negotiate all these things, right, always Apple is the one that win the arguments. It's either you follow our rules and we allow you to get into our platform, build on apps, like iOS apps, and then you have a business. Or if not, then you just go away. So that's how it works in the past, and all this has been working for so many years. And now you can see that for Apple, it's really like good business. They are the one that own the customer, not all these like small apps around. So I think that's one good example to highlight. We'll combine a few questions. I think these are more related before we talk about the recessions. So I'll combine these two. I think from the same person as well. I mean, everyone in the world are using Apple with iOS, Microsoft for businesses, and Google with Android. So I think this is one. And then the other one is to build on questions from Martin, to build on to the questions about Apple, Microsoft, and Google right earlier. Wouldn't the rise of AI development be their next big thing that will drive growth? I think this is also related. So I want to hear opinions, your opinions, YCX.
The AI next big thing is actually, you can kind of see that the platforms are trying to keep the users or the customers on their platforms. That's exactly what is happening right now, which is that you see Microsoft is very early to this thing. Google is also very early. I mean, literally 1 month later, that's it. In the sense that it has been the same strategy over and over again. You can see Microsoft did it with all the apps on its systems, essentially taking over all the key apps like Excel, Office, Word, all this. They become the key app. And then the what else? Microsoft Outlook as well. So yeah, that's all the key things that Microsoft managed to take over and put on and the browser as well, the Internet Explorer, take over and put it on theirs. Then you can kind of see that when they were trying to take over the mobile market, in that area, they were quite stretched out in terms of that. And in that meantime, Google managed to carve out its own platform. Such that they took over email as well. So, I mean, if you think about it, email used to be a paid thing, because somebody has to run the servers for the emails to come in. So it's a paid thing. And then not only that, there's a lot of like unwanted mail, like a lot of spam mail, a lot of all these things, because of the and the platform owners actually, I mean the server owners actually do a lot to ensure that all these spam and whatever is removed lah. So the and it's actually not free. Is there's a cost to it, but then you can see that Microsoft has made theirs free because they want to prevent all these other all these other competitors from coming in, and Google has also made it free because they had the foresight also to see that the data on it is also very important to them, and that they have to make the product free so that they can keep all the users on it. And then right now it's the same thing for the AI things, which is that the AI, the algo, all this is not really that important to them, because fine, if you have an algo that's very good, I can always spend like $100 million to hire some engineers to recreate the same algo. It's not like algos are patented like that. You can't patent an algo, or at least not that I know of right now, without revealing all of it of how it's done. And then so all these things is that they all recognize that ultimately is you're trying to capture the endpoint demand, which is that what your customer is using and what your customer is paying money for. So the money comes in from one direction only. Then it's a matter of like how you capture that money flow coming in from the customers, and that is what matters to them. So if they are able to, that's why they don't mind spending so much to take over things, because they know that ultimately in the end is the money spigot is over there, and they want to be the first in line to capture so that they can get more of that. So that is it's not so much about like who has the best AI tech. It's more about like who manages to keep the customers on their platform using the AI tech. Yeah, so that is the key thing about it. So that is how we will observe all the things that are playing out. That's how they will observe them more, because when they manage to keep the customers there, then eventually all the other new ideas and whatever, they will think, hey, this is where the creators will think, hey, this is where all the customers are. If I want to make money and I want to make money fast because I'm a startup with a runway, I will have to get on this platform no matter what. Because if I don't make my product accessible on this platform, then that means I'm competing against the full mic of that platform, and I might not make as much money, or someone else might just take my idea, and because they see that, oh, my idea only exists on A platform and it's not on B platform, so someone else might just take my idea and quickly put it out on B platform and A platform, and then it becomes that they took over my ideas market share. Like, you will most likely use a app. Let's say there are two similar AI technology apps, right? You will most likely use the one that is on every single platform over the one that's only on one of the platforms. Even if the one on one platform, like maybe say is on the Apple App Store, is very good, but it's not cross-platform, then you might consider, hey, that's not what I want to use, that kind of idea. So, that is what I see from the spaces and how they develop.
Yep. Thanks for the comment. My opinion on this, right, is that I'm quite interested to see how all these different companies use the so-called the AI. Actually, when we talk about AI, it's not really AI. It's more like the generative AI, right, which is a very specific AI. So I do think that different companies, they use it for their own, to strengthen their core business. I think that's the more I see, the more I feel this way. So, for example, Microsoft, they are selling all these productivity tools. So they will just use all this generative AI to build on top and charge more to the customers. So now imagine that right now, as of now, if for those who are using a lot of like all this ChatGPT in their workflow, right, you still need to do a lot of copy and paste. For example, you copy text here to ChatGPT, ask some questions, ask the ChatGPT to come up with some suggestion or solution, and then you need to copy paste back to whatever that you're working on. Could be Excel, could be programming, could be writing an email and so on, right? So this is still the case now, but over the next, I'll call it like 6 to 12 months, I think all this will build into the platforms. Whether you are able, you will use it or not, depends on whether you are willing or your company is willing to pay extra for those productivity tools to be embedded in the tools that you are already using. So I think that's Microsoft now. And then for the others, for example, like Google, I think they are still mainly try to use generative AI to help them to get more get more advertising revenue. Which I think right now, if you use ChatGPT, there's no external link, right? And there's not much advertisement inside the response. But I think over the next quite like 1-2 years, right, you will started to see all these advertisements inside the response given. Say, for example, when you try to book, ask ChatGPT or any generative AI solutions, right, to plan your Japan trip, right, I think they will just come up with some solutions that have some advertisement embedded in. For example, they will ask you whether you want me to help you book the air tickets, and they will suggest a certain airline over the other, because of the, someone paid more for the advertisement, right? I mean, there are many ways to do it, but they will use it mainly for their advertisement business because that's their core business. Whereas for Apple, I think Apple looks like they're a bit slow when it comes to all this AI. But actually, I don't think they are that slow. It's just that they don't openly use all this so-called AI in their communications. They tend to be more subtle. They don't want to use the word now. But you can see that, for example, right, if you use Apple Note, right, you can actually turn on the camera and then just use the camera to scan text, right? And from the text, you can use it already. I think this helps. Solution, I don't know when they invented this, probably not too long ago. But initially, I thought that, okay, it's just like, just scan text only, nothing much, right? But after I used it a few times, right, I think it's really, really helpful. I think all these small productivity usage of all this generative AI will be, there'll be more coming in. So I think it will make the device or the platforms even, easy to use and helpful to us. So I think that's the good things. Very good from productivity point of view. We can go on for
me. What I do actually have to point out is that the reason why I'm also in this sense I'm not that big into like Microsoft, Apple, Google, all these, right? Is that why I'm so big into NVIDIA is also because I agree with what the NVIDIA vision is, which is that currently tech has been very insular. It has been mainly focused on like the tech aspect. That means like the software aspect of like the world, right? Which is that, you are an industry, whatever industry that you are, you can use our apps, you can use our applications, you can use our platforms to create. I mean, to CRUD, create, retrieve, update, and delete data, to manage your data, right? On our platforms, and we provide that service. But then what NVIDIA is trying to do right now, right, is that they are trying to make it so that it's no longer just about like the CRUD of it. It's more of like, why not you just build out your entire factory in our digital space? And by building out your entire factory in our digital space, right, you get to save money because you no longer have to maintain all those like hardware related expertise, or rather you can streamline your hardware related expertise or your industry related expertise, so that if you are able to model it, then you save the money, because you can just you don't have to build out your entire factory to then figure out that it's not working or something. You can just build out and model, and you can run like thousands of simulations on our platforms, and then eventually find the simulation that is the most optimized for you before you start building. So then the expertise is all concentrated on the digital side of things. So that is like a area of exploration that NVIDIA is trying to spearhead to take over. That is one of the reasons why I continue staying invested in NVIDIA compared to like the other companies. The mistake would be to think that NVIDIA is going to be like Intel or AMD like that, because you can kind of see that for Intel, AMD, they are very focused on like, oh, we are going to get out our product as best as we can to the thing. And then we are going to win on like the red ocean point, the part of it. Like red ocean means that the competitors are not as competitive and we are the best there. But then what NVIDIA is doing is that they kind of like are trying to just make it so that they are taking on the new field. That is why I think that if they are able to succeed in this area, right, which is that they take over all these developer and all these industry users their stuff, right? Then they become like the new platform. They become like the new platform. Yeah, that is my point of view on like the NVIDIA strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true because NVIDIA, whatever that they're working on right now, I think at least it is like an entirely new area, right? Because all this digital factory that you just mentioned is not, today we don't see that much, right? It's mostly just simulation within a very narrow domain, right? But theirs is a lot broader, which for now, as of now, I think not many are using, like almost non-existent. Whereas for like Microsoft, Google, Apple, their business, right, whatever that they're doing now, the core business is already quite matured. They just layer it with a generative AI to actually improve them. Like it will be incremental improvement. It won't be like an entirely new business line. Whereas for NVIDIA, it will be something that is totally new. Like you can do a lot of optimizations in the digital world before you roll out to the real world, right? These kind of things has never been done in the past. So I think that's make it a lot more exciting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because in the past, it's just about like you do it on the spreadsheet. So you just put your numbers on the spreadsheet and then you try to see like, oh, this is where the money is. This is where it's kind of like accounting like that. You kind of see like this is where a lot of the money is being spent, and then you think about like you start having meetings about like, oh, this we are spending so much on this particular area. Is there any way we can cut down on it or reduce on it? And then people start to have meetings about like, oh, this is my idea, that is my idea, that kind of things, and then you do presentations and whatever, and then you can see that the world is still ruled by PowerPoint slides, right? Because people just put up PowerPoint slides and they talk about ideas. Then then after that, you then start to do your research and things, and then again it's PowerPoint slides to decide, and then it depends on like the executive like foresight to think which PowerPoint slide is the best and execute according to that PowerPoint slide. I mean, that is that, right? But then you think about it, the manufacturing industry doesn't really just work by PowerPoint slide. You can see that at some point they will have to move to like say, hey, this is a machine and we are going to build out a trial small factory over there. And the trial small factory is going to produce out some things, and then once we see that it's a working model, then we produce more of it, and then we buy up more factory space and make it bigger, and then try to push out to globally or whatever things. And that is like, and through that, there's a lot of capex, right? Because you build up a small factory already, so capex is over there. Then you still got to take care of like warehousing, all these kind of things. And then after that is the whole supply chain management comes in, because it becomes distribution. You get to get people to do sales and whatever things like that. But instead, if let's say you have like, instead of just PowerPoint presentations, you start to have like all these simulations come out, and then people start to say, hey, okay, fine, that is your idea and things, and how about we run through them in the simulations and see, does it play out based on this and based on that? How does it work? If the simulation works out okay, we go with this simulation or we go with that simulation before we buy the parts or whatever to assemble. And that itself is a lot of money and effort saving already, because surely it has to be faster to build out in a simulation compared to building out in the real world and waiting for suppliers to pass you the machinery parts and have all kinds of issue that kind of ways. So that is the vision that I'm seeing that's going in that direction.
Yep, interesting to follow. Let's see what they come up with over the next few years. And also see the adoptions, right? I think they need a lot more adoptions rather than just build the platform. Now it's at the platform stage. I think still a lot more will go on. Okay, let's move on to other questions. This is done. Let me see if there's any questions related first. Okay, no. Okay, let's follow the sequence here. Now come to the recessions. Is the recessions over? Can we buy now? YCX, you want to comment on this?
I'm not. The thing is that for me, I think it's okay to buy, but I don't think it's a good time to long options. That's what I feel. Yeah. I mean, in general, market is like back to normal. So I don't think options will do well. I mean, I don't think leverage will do well. Buying is still fine, but yeah, not leverage. That's what I feel.
Yep, I think I think in my last video I mentioned about this. I don't first when talk about recession, when talk about macro, right? First thing to say is that I don't have insights on this type of questions or this kind of topic. It's very hard to predict the macro. So that's why probably avoid from doing too much of this kind of macro predictions. That's one thing. But that aside, right, there are still things that we can look at to have a sense. Like for example, we tend to talk about valuations, right? Like you just look at the forward PE level compared to the past. You can have at least a view or some insights to know that whether it's expensive now or not relative to the past. Okay, I think this kind of things is not macro predictions, but still it informs us. Like if we buy now, we need to aware that okay, the valuations is like above long-term average. Which is true now. Okay. Secondly, is talking about like all this interest rate, right? Like last time, just go back to during let's say 2020 when interest rate is 0%. If you don't invest, you need to be comfortable holding on cash earning 0%. You're okay to do that, right? But now you have a much more better alternative. Like just put your money with money market funds. You can earn, let's call it like between 3.5 to 4%, right? So I think that's quite attractive. Like you can just, put some money into this saving account and just wait, see and wait. I think at least that's my approach as of now. I just continue with my DCA, but it is a very low DCA compared to what I have been doing last year or the year before. So I slow down. Put more money into like money market funds, not really to market time. It's really just to, play around with my asset allocations. I don't want to, all in and have zero cash at this moment. Let's say if equity market drop by 20% from now, then I'm stuck again, right? I don't have much more money to deploy. So I try to avoid that kind of situation. That's why I put some money into money market funds or like short-term deposits. That's my position as of now. But I won't be so extreme to say that, okay, I stop investing in equity or even sell off my equity portfolio. That one I won't do. But for new money, just play along with the asset allocations. Be balanced. That's my stand at this moment.
Yeah, I agree. on that entirely.
Yeah. Okay. Next one. Your ROIC YouTube video. Can you do one live ROIC calculations of NVDA using figures from 10K? Different websites give different value formulas. Thus, unsure how to calculate. I think I have shared about NVIDIA valuation in the past, but I need to dig up which video it is. So, later I see whether I am able to share more on this. But when it comes to looking at the data and make sure that the data tie with the 10K, right? I think in the past I've been looking at, let's say, call it the macro trends website. I think it's able to match. I don't see a lot of issues. Of course, if you look at like 4 or 5 different platforms, of course there will be some data source doesn't tie. But look at the one that is more reliable. At least you can do a sense check, right? Looking at this platform, you don't know whether the number is correct or not. Maybe just focus on the revenue, match the revenue versus the one from the 10K or 10Q, right? Then you have some confidence that the figures is the right one. Then you can use, right? I think I don't have much issue in terms of like getting totally wrong numbers. At least that's my experience. In terms of the figures, let me see what do I have. Yeah, you see this one is from macro trends, and then I did some analytics. Maybe valuation is not in this file. Yeah, that one need to take it out. So suggest one, look at macro trends. And then, of course, if you want to be serious, right, I would say just go to 10Q and extract the data that you want from 10Q. You don't have to use all these platforms. The platforms, sometimes they are useful when we are not doing in-depth analysis. You just want to, like take a look at the, very surface overview, right? You can use all these sites, right? ROIC, you can use Yahoo Finance, you can use FinVis. All these are quite helpful. But whenever you want to go in-depth analysis, of course, you have to go to 10Q1 because 10Q you have more detailed analysis. I give one example. Right? When I look at Amazon, right, if you just look at the surface, right, actually very hard to look at the surface because the two business line, right, the cloud AWS and the e-commerce, right, they are very, very different in terms of their margin, in terms of their growth rate. So if you just lump these two together and look at it on the top, right, actually it's like very hard to make sense because sometimes the business, they both two different business line grow together. Sometimes one grow, one actually have negative growth, and when it sum up together, it give a very very noisy kind of data. And when you want to interpret the margin, also it's very hard to interpret because it's always like the sum product of two different lines, which is one high margin, another one low margin. So I think if you want to do an in-depth one, you really need to go to the 10Q and look at the breakdown of the business lines, and you will have more understanding on the business, right? Even for small companies like Palantir, right? If you want to understand the business, you still need to break down to government business versus the corporate one and see whether are they growing on the government business and then are they growing on the corporate business? Because these two, right, is very different. One depending on the government budget, the other one depending on the corporate. So it's very different, right? Each of these company, unless it's really very simple companies, simple one, maybe Apple I would consider them as simple because still a huge proportion of their revenue coming from iPhone. So these are the simple one. I would say most businesses, whenever you are doing in-depth analysis, you still need to go to 10Q, look at the breakdown, try to understand the details. Even for, let's say, like Alibaba, right? I also think that you need to look at the individual business lines because their e-commerce, even e-commerce inside China versus outside of China, right? Which is Lazada, right? And others. All this could be different also. One is having positive margin, the other one is not having positive margin. How can you combine these two, right? Sometimes it's just because the one that is having lower margin growing higher. So it will distort the overall figures just because of the weight become like it's different now, right? So sometimes you need to break down all this to do an in-depth overview. So don't rely too much on this like ROIC.ai, this kind of websites. It's good for like one glimpse, but whenever you try to do valuation, want to do an in-depth one, go to the direct source. And when you go to direct source, of course, you can read, those commentary, right? So it help you inform you of what's happening with the companies. So yeah, I think that's on these questions. Before that, okay, let me read out this one first. Then I see YCX you want to comment or not. Can provide websites for ROIC figure for US and foreign stocks. Foreign stocks cannot find, thus need to do manual calculation, thus require you to teach. I'm not accounting expert lah, okay. But I would say if you focus on operating numbers, you focus on like the simple stuff, the revenue, how much is their expenses, how much is their operating income, their net income. I think the simple one, as long as you access to their income statement, I'm sure you are able to like come up with a sense of what's happening with the companies lah. So that's my viewpoint on this. For the previous question and this question, I don't know, YCX, you have anything to add here?
My point, I think it depends on how much money you have, and also, are you like a fund manager kind of point in perspective? Because if you want to go into looking at all these and valuations, I would kind of assume that you are like a fund manager and you have like some kind of due diligence or reports to write, and then you have to justify and make your investors think that you are doing work like that, like you have all these kind of things that you do, and that's how you, based on all these things that you arrive at this conclusion, and this is why you allocate 1% here and 2% there instead of 1.5% each, that kind of idea, right? So of course, because all these are more on like they are still considered fundamentals, but they are not like the future fundamentals kind of thing. It's more of like you are looking at it for I think 2 or 3 main reasons. First main reason would be that what is the trend over time? So that's the first thing. So what's the trend over time? Then the second thing is what is the trend over time compared to its competition? So you can that's the 2 things that you want to see over here. And of course the third thing is you want to be ahead in terms of like the material public information. So you focus on all these reports and things that are there because you really drill into each of every single line of like maybe the 10Q, 10K and the 8K kind of things to figure out what exactly are they saying in all these like official things that they are reporting to the SEC. And then that is ultimately all this has to have like a action done. It's not like you just do all this for fun. It's kind of like in the end you are doing it because you are seriously considering between getting company A and getting company B or getting company C or that kind of things, right? Then you think about it. That's why I say it's like if you are a fund manager and you are trying to you have an ETF and then you have like some kind of mandate that you try to do this and that, and then of course there's always like things like what you say, there is like the money market funds, and the money market fund says that the risk-free rate now is like what 4% or whatever. So whatever that you buy, it has to be above that 4%, right? Because if it's near or below that 4%, then people will be asking you, hey, whatever that you do is not even risk adjusted or whatever, it's not even near this 4% thing, and it looks very bad like what is the kind of like basis that you use to do your investments, and why should we continue using your fund or your management expertise? Then it's hard to justify that but you have all these things that you are doing to drill down into that, then you will be able to defend and say and then convince people who are on the fence on that But for a retail investor kind of things, unless you're already in this line and you're doing this kind of work, right, then if you focus on all this as a hobby is good and then you can learn and do but as like if you are you try to wreck your head on doing all these things, right, it must come down to that what is the action that you're trying to justify. Or is it just for learning? If it's just for learning, fine. But if it's like you are trying to make a decision on it, right, then it's a matter of, is doing all this actually going to make up a large percentage of your decision making? Or is the other aspects of it like really looking at like how the companies are positioned in the current and in the future markets and how they might move or think ultimately going to be the bigger decision making component of how you invest your money? That is where I would say, for me personally, I focus more on that rather than focus on the details of it, because the details of it is frankly, there's so many analysts out there. Every earnings, you can see that there are analysts that already projected things, and then the companies have their own projections, and then they report, and then they get questioned over it, and then you can read on all kinds of website on like this is what their projections are, how they arrive at it, and whatever kind of things. And that is that in that things it's not really required for you to actually to go in depth and look at it. Of course, the basics you must be able to know, which is like your top line, your bottom line, your COGS, your capex, your investment activities, your financial activities, your operating activities. You must roughly know that, and then you must roughly know who are the customers, who are the suppliers, those kind of thing. Those are like the Porter 5, whatever nonsense. So you kind of like know that, then you can make a decision based on that really. You don't have to go so in depth. But yeah, that's my point of view.
Yeah, totally agree. I saw that there's like quite a big interest on this area. You see this coming two questions. Can do a class and live demo to teach how to calculate ROE, ROIC, etc. I also agree if you can teach us about how to count ROE, ROIC from the financial report directly. Not sure whether there's more. But I think like what YCX mentioned, right? For me, if you ask me to derive the numbers, right, I might not able to get the exact numbers that can tie to some of these platforms that they already provided, right? So, but I think sometimes we don't have to be too worked out to get the precise numbers, because, for example, right, this ROIC, right, they are, and even for ROE, their numerator, they will come back to some sort of like like the returns, meaning their profit same as net income, but sometimes they take out the before tax rate, like the EBIT, right? Take out unwind it before the tax rate and so on. That's the profit numerator, right? Then I think the concept is more important than the figure itself, because the concept here is that for those who look at PE, right, you just focus on what is the earnings part, or for those who look at the earnings, you just look at earnings. But here, whenever you look at ROE and ROIC, the important concept is to say that it doesn't matter how much profit that one company have versus the other. Like two companies, they can have the same profit, right? But let's say one company is very heavy, like heavy capital. The other one is very light capital. Say, for example, all these technology companies, right? They don't have to have a lot of money tied up in the companies. The other one is like, let's say, hardware or auto business, right? Which is like the famous high capex, high capital business, right? So the one that has the high ROE and ROIC, meaning that whatever money that you earn, you can actually just take out from the companies. So it can accrue to the shareholders using share buyback or using dividends, doesn't matter. But the money can get out. Whereas for those high capex business, right, they tend to have very, very low ROE, because the money actually tied up with the company. You cannot take out like all the plant and equipment. You have to keep on reinvesting, right? So this is so-called the high capex business, right? And usually high capex leads to low ROE and low ROIC. You need to understand the concept, and from the concept, try to understand which type of companies have high or low ROE or ROIC. But I think that's good enough, right? You don't have to like really calculate to the like 18.5%. Is it very different compared to 15%, right? I don't think so. I think it's really just to help you inform, like, okay, whether it's high capex or low capex. That's it. Because even for low ROE business doesn't mean that it's not investable. It's just that's the characteristics of the business. That's it, right? So it's a characteristics. Yeah, I'll just say that lah. But let's say if you're really interested with this, right? I would say maybe you can private message me on Telegram, and then maybe you can show me what you are working on, the companies that you are researching now, and what number that you are trying to tie, and then you are stuck at certain, like 10Q, you don't know how to do, right? If you already put on some work and you are stuck somewhere, right, just you can reach out to me. I can try my best to help. But let's say if you want me to start from scratch, like you haven't done any work and I haven't done any work, now I need to start from zero, right? I think that will take a lot of effort, and I'm not expert in this area anyway. So it will be quite a huge effort for me to do this. So let's say if you need some help there, maybe you can start first. Let me know if there's anything that I can help to sometimes to help out a bit in the process. I'm willing to do that now. So let me know. But
I think
yeah,
this list of questions that they are put over here
mm,
is more addressed to you, because it's kind
yeah,
of like they see that you have a YouTube channel and they want to like see if you can come up with some kind of like simple guide, right? Whereby you just pull up a 10K or 10Q or something, and then start keying numbers into the copy pasting numbers into the Excel sheet, and then like putting it out lah. And then after that you just tell them, so this is like that, like that, like that, like that, and then this
yeah.
is how you drive
Uh,
these ratios and numbers. I mean, yes, as a video concept, it's probably okay. I think there are people who might watch that, and from what I know on YouTube, the financials, if you are doing if you are taking advertising revenue, financials actually has a high rate of advertising revenue for YouTube, I think. Then yeah lah, that is what. But if you are really let's say if you are really like hungry to learn that kind of things, right? The best thing you can do is that you just go to ChatGPT, probably ChatGPT 4, okay? And then you just type in your question in ChatGPT 4 and then take it from there, quickly get out an answer. It will be very fast, and you can, whatever thing that you are not sure of, you ask ChatGPT on all these, right? It is very good at answering everything really. It's really very good at that. And you can even ask it to present information in table or format so that you can kind of think. And I also use it to like number check, because sometimes I calculate out, then I use it to number check to see whether it's correct. And ChatGPT also does the same thing. So if you are really in that high speed, you want to learn quickly, I just recommend doing ChatGPT to do it.
Yep, sounds like a good idea. But I think it's not like I don't want to produce video on this kind of topics. It's just that, sometimes all this, it will take some time to actually just put up one companies to calculate the ROE, because like we want to make sure that the numbers is correct, right? So you extract the ROE numbers from one platforms, right? You don't even know whether you can get the exact figures or not. And when you cannot get the exact figures, you still need to investigate, right? So all those, right, actually will take some effort. And I do think that, let's say, right, if I show you something like what I've been doing, right? I mean, I've shown this in the past. This is my Alibaba numbers, right? I extract like every quarters, how much the breakdown and so on. I do key into the spreadsheet, but I don't have the ROE calculations here. But my point is that if I just put into the spreadsheet, right, and just show you, okay, this number, I plug it from here and there, plug it from here and there. First, it's not going to be an interesting video. Secondly, it's very hard for other people to look at all this number and just can follow whatever that I'm doing. Because I think whoever that's serious to learn about like all these calculations, right? First, you need to do it yourself first. You need to go into it, try to do the first version, like you start from scratch, you do it, and then doesn't mean that you will arrive at to get the exact numbers, right? But if you cannot, you start somewhere, you say, okay, the number that I calculated is 200,000. How come this platform give me 100,000? Where's the 100,000 when, right? Then that kind of questions, then we can, look into it together. I think it makes more sense to learn this way, because you need to be more active in that rather than consuming like passively. For other topics, yes, I think just listening, consuming passively, I think it works. But whenever it comes to like the maths calculations, right, you really need to hands on and do that yourself. It helps with the learnings. That's why I say I cannot like just come up with a 5 minutes video, 10 minutes video, and then just walk through the source and then you just consume that, then you know how to calculate, right? It's not that simple. I think you need to take the first step first. Then I will try to assist whenever you have some difficulty. I think that one works a lot better. At least on calculation type of topics. Okay.
Or you can just take an accounting class from someone.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. I think we have still a couple more questions to go. This is done. Okay, I think all these Y6 questions, I believe coming from the same persons. Let me go through one by one now. Okay. YCX spends so much time reading. How he read at same time, protect eyesight and prevent body tired. What is the method or advice used to be able to read all day?
I mean, I find it interesting. It's like fun to read, so I just read. This is literally my hobby to read. And then I read fast because sometimes a lot of content is nowadays is all regurgitated content. So if you see it and you're able to see fast, like you don't have to read every single word, right? Sometimes you read things and you just speed read. I mean, it's just about speed reading. Then when you get used to it, the speed reading happens faster and faster. Then it's the same thing for listening to videos. When you get used to how people speak fast, then you start to listen at 1.5x, 2x. And then things go through, and it's not like there's everything new over there all the time. It's usually just ideas are all built upon ideas. And if you understand the first idea, the next idea is like 10% variation on it, or 20% variation on it. And you listen and you digest fast once that way. It's just like building up on that. It's just like maths. You do 5 plus 5, then later you see 5 plus 6. It's obvious, right? You don't have to go back to learn how to do 5 plus 6 when you already know 5 plus 5, that kind of idea. That's how to go fast. Yeah. And then I try to maximize time also, which is that during exercise like workout or whatever, I listen to things or I read things while doing so. That's the idea. And then that's about it. And
Okay, we just go through this. For people who emphasize on dividends, if underlying REIT and stock drop price, what do you do? Focus on dividend yield is misguided. Want to comment on this?
I agree. So is dividends is more of like a way to kind of like I mean, in the past it was probably make more sense, because if you're giving out dividends, it means that your numbers aren't really doctored, right? Because last time is a bit more vague. Your regulations are not that tight. So as a company that is not giving out dividends, people will question that, hey, your numbers look so good and you're making so much money, but you're not giving out any dividends. So is there something that the management is doing that is shady or whatever? Why are you not giving out dividends? Then that's why the shareholders will push for giving out dividends, right? Because if you don't give out dividends, then we're not getting any money from it. Then it will be very bad. But then nowadays, it kind of seems like a lot of people are relying on the regulations and things. And then there's also like a lot of taxation things that are related to short-term capital gains and long-term capital. And there's a lot of all these manipulations, and there's more like trust in the management to be aligned with shareholder interest. So the dividends is not really that big of a player. But that being said, I do agree that some amount of dividends, I'm not certain on the percentage, but I do agree that some amount of dividends should be paid out, because that is kind of like to remind the management or whatever that they have to be aligned with shareholder interests. Because if you are not aligned with it, then you start to lose track and you start to think of other things like what stakeholder management, ESG, whatever things that don't maximize the profit, and then you are no longer in a capitalist system, right? So then that is the issue. So in the sense, if you are doing long-term investing, the dividend yield itself is just a number. It's not really that big of a deal. I mean, it really depends on your age group as well. So if you are like older and you really do benefit from the income, then yes, the dividend yield and all this is important. But if you are not and you have a different strategy or whatever, it really depends on your shareholder outlook on their life and how they want the money back in. And that's about it. In the end, you still have to know that good companies are still valued on whether they are good or not. It's not valued on whether they give out more dividends or give out less dividends. It's also about whether you understand how they manage to derive all these dividends. Because if you don't understand, then it's pointless as well.
Yeah, I think my problem with dividend investing is that the dividend numbers, right, it's always there's a lot of noise in there. For example, let's say if the core business already deteriorating, and companies still have a lot of like cash sitting around, right? Then they can still maintain dividends, although the core business has been deteriorating. So what it means is that if you only focus on the dividend amount, right, and you see that, every year I get a constant dividend number, sometimes even growing 5-10%, right? To me, it's all good, right? So you go and skip all the, the monitoring of the companies and just focus on the dividend, you actually will be very slow to react. So that's why I think that's my biggest problem with regards to the so-called the dividend investing. And you need to know that in terms of the maths, right? If you say, okay, I buy this company because it give me 6% dividend, looks good, 6%. And then let's say, imagine every year they go and cut the dividend by 10%, and then the share price reacted together, right? Like share price also dropped by 10%. If this repeated year over year, right, what it means is that the dividend yield will be forever at 6%, So price dropped 10%, the dividend payout dropped 10%. So the numerator and denominator both drop together. So you don't see it. You still think that, okay, if I sell now, I'm giving up my 6% dividend income, right? So you continue to hold because it's 6%, looks good. Then next year, your value drop by another 10% because the share price dropped, right? So I think this one need to aware that companies is able to pay dividends only if their business is doing well. And whether you do dividend investing or other form of investing, you still need to look at the fundamental of the business. I think that's something that you cannot skip. It's just that some people, they take the shortcut. They don't look at the business. They just look at the final dividend numbers. And that numbers can be manipulated to a certain extent now. Then when they really don't have money already, they do a big cut, then share price will drop a lot, right? So I think many people get caught on these kind of situations because they haven't been paying too much attention to the fundamentals of the core business now. But the dividend yield, dividend investing, like let's say you like a company, the core business is good, but they are paying dividend. I think that's fine, right? It's just that they are profitable and they are willing to pay out some money, like what YCX say. It's part of the capitalism, right? So it's fine to have this kind of companies. Don't think that companies that are paying dividend means that they don't have growth. I don't think that's true. And in this context, I would say that you might want to include the share buyback together with dividend, because both of these are still money paid to the shareholders. It's just in a different form. It's just that for share buyback, there will be other considerations that dividend don't have. For example, like if they're doing share buyback, is the company's overvalued at the moment? Because if it is super overvalued and then the companies continue to do share buyback, right? So that's something that you might be concerned as well, right? So I think this is on the dividend investing.
Yeah, the other thing is that don't confuse dividend with like bond payments, because on the hierarchy of things, bond payments are higher than dividends. Because when they have bonds, they are placed. That means if the company, no matter what, the company has to pay off the bonds first before they come to pay dividends. If they cannot even pay off the bonds, right, the dividends will be zero. Is literally that. Then, in fact, it might even be negative if they do like some kind of like share dilution or rights issue or whatever things. It is literally negative dividend. Yeah. And then if you are interested in like bonds itself, then instead of dividends, you might just want to buy the company's bonds, I guess. Although I'm not quite sure how to do that, but then there is always an avenue of thing to buy bonds or to buy money market funds, because those are the types that are usually harder to risk default. I mean, they are more, you would expect that a big company would be able to sustain its bond payments for at least the next 5 to 10 years, even if their businesses are going bad.
Hey, next 3 questions all directed to YCX. YCX, will you read all earnings transcript when it is released? How you select which company to read?
Just by hobby, just random read. That's it. I see which industry looks interesting, then I read that. I mean, I read more on tech, but then I do want to learn about other things as well. So just read. It's just like you go traveling like that. Then you go visit things, and then you just say, hey, this one interesting to visit, and that one interesting to visit. Just go see, and then just see. That's it. I mean,
yeah, that's good. YCX, will the existing data center be obsolete or lose value as they are using GPU chips instead of advanced NVDA chips? Is this GPU or CPU? I think maybe he's referring to.
It could be, I mean, it depends on how they are structured, but usually you see all the data centers, they are very extendable. Like they have systems that are like plug in and use kind of things. And all the suppliers, they kind of are also aware that data centers don't all upgrade over. They don't like refresh and change all their hardware one shot. It's usually like incremental. I upgrade here, I upgrade there, and then that kind of thing. Retire this, retire that. So they are all built with that in mind. So they are a lot of all these systems are all like uh compatible across generations. Then you can see from NVIDIA's ones as well, like the A100s, the H100s, the V100s, they are kind of compatible in the sense that you can just take out the whatever old chips and put in the new chips, or you can maintain and share workload. There is interconnects, there is NVLink, all these to help share workloads across different architectures and things. There is a lot of consideration that is done in all these data centers to ensure that it's not like we buy your system, we are vendor locked into your system forever, that kind of things. So of course, the is every suppliers go to vendor lock their downstream, but then there is also a balance between there, because if you try to push too hard on the vendor lock, there are companies there are data centers that might think that if we go too deep into yours, we are vendor locked to yours, we effectively lose our ability to set prices to demand prices, and then that means that over time our profit margins are lowered. But then they have, of course, on the data center side, their perspective is also that if we don't provide what is like, let's say if your company is providing like the AI chips that no other people have, and we don't get into it, we might lose out on our revenue from there. And that is another thing that we have to concern about. And we don't mind getting vendor locked a bit if it means that we continue generating more revenue more than the vendor lock might cost us. So it's kind of like a balancing act between the customer and the supplier in whatever way possible. Yeah. I think you're muted. So here is that
Sorry. Yeah.
whether I'm a full-time investor or whatever. I'm not a full-time investor. I still do work. It's just that my work is more of like in focus sessions, like in spurts. So there's like time periods whereby I am not like that active at work. It's kind of like dormant, but then there are some situations whereby I am entirely focused on the work. And since my role is more of like a desk-bound role, so there is that lah. Then as to like what exactly I do, I don't feel like I need to mention it now because it's not irrelevant to what, but it's in the tech industry wise lah. So that is what I do. Then I prefer my privacy in terms of that. Maybe in the future I'm more of like a front facing role that I'll probably share more. But since it is kind of like a back end role, there is no point in me sharing that lah. But it is related to tech.
Yes, just now really muted. Thanks a lot. Okay. Even the face also haven't shown, right? So maybe there's still the privacy that you want to maintain. But for those who are watching, I have met YCX once, only once. If not, I'll be talking to like an avatar picture, just the alphabets. a bit challenging, I think. Okay, next one. YCX and YouTube Guru both buy Alibaba, one cut loss, another keep making excuse, hold until margin call, and keep helping management make excuse. Know when you are wrong is important. You want to comment on this?
I mean, it's a bit of luck as well, right? Because you never know how things will turn out. Tomorrow, wake up on the other side of the bed and think, hey, let's do American style free market capitalism. Then suddenly you see the whole thing change entirely. You also don't know, right? It's like there's a bit of luck over there as well. It's not entirely just of course, it is always possible to like you make the best of your situation. Like you can't expect like you to always to make the right things, but over time you try to maximize. It's not like making a wrong decision in hindsight is a end of the world kind of thing unless you're like heavily leveraged. So if you are if I mean it's about sizing allocation, portfolio allocation, that kind of things. You don't I mean even if you're very confident that a 4D or total number will appear, you also don't go like max out your credit card and buy everything, right, or something.
Yeah.
In that sense, you still maybe put a sizable amount on your 4D bet because of like what you think that is a very good idea to do it or whatever. But then in the end, it's still about the portfolio allocation. There is that and the rest is just luck. It's like playing poker like that. There's always a chance that your opponent wins, right? Because maybe the chance is only like 15%, but you will still take the shot or whatever, right? Because if you have like a 85% or whatever thing based on your information and you try to go for it, over time consistency will win out. But it doesn't mean you always win, and it doesn't mean that there are situations whereby you don't always. There are situations whereby you still lose despite playing the best odds, and that's just life. Yeah. It's just that you know.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine that Alibaba just go to $600, right? Then I can rewrite this sentence, right? YCX and YouTube Guru both buy Alibaba. One panic sold when the price was down. Another one keep holding on and earn big monies. Then something along the way it's just that it can become hero just because the end results turn out differently or vice versa, right? So quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I could also say that maybe let's say the generative AI thing didn't come out and we just stuck at $200, 150 to 200 for a long time. I would still be buying it, but I mean, now I'm not really buying it. I mean, I DCA lesser because it's so high. And for the past few months, I've been putting into, as I mentioned, I've been putting into other things that I find to be better in terms of like the valuation and in terms of like the risk reward. But now, recently also they just DCA back in because it's below the prices that I sold and whatever. So there is that idea as well. I mean, maybe the next 3-6 months or whatever, some things happen, market crash, whatever, NVDA goes back to 300, 200. Also likely. I mean, this is just there is always an element of luck, and you have to kind of like understand that it's not something you can control. Then there's also no point trying to control it or lose sleep over it. You just have to factor in that whatever that you are doing, you have the possibility that over this period of time, it might go down to this number or go up to that number, and what you might do with it. And you already plan out already. If you really plan out, then that's fine. If you never plan out, then when it hits that moment, then you will feel a bit more like, oh, I'm not sure what I should do, whatever kind of things, and then you give in more to the euphoria or to like the fear. Then you do other things instead of what you already planned out beforehand. So it's kind of like probably write down this is like what I think what Warren Buffett or Munger or say or something, right? Before you buy into anything, you write down what are you buying it for and that kind of things, and then it's kind of like a reflection, or that you in like 1 year ago, 2 years ago, this is how you thought. What changed now that you think this way? You better look back and you see, is it still whatever change, can it be justified or whatever? And then you better consider that way. If not, then you might just be living in the moment the whole time. And that's not very good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, next one. YCX, any views on Datadog? The drop heavily. Is it better buy? What is the thing you like about Datadog? I don't recall you talk about this company in the past. You have any view on this?
I don't know also. I think they are very similar. I'm not sure. I never really read up on it, but they're probably very similar to Twilio or something, and they are more like data platforms whereby companies put up their data there because they provide some kind of management or data analytics kind of things.
Database lah. Database provider, right?
Analytics or something. But I'm not sure exactly what they do, and in the end, is also unknown whether they are allowed to use the data that's put on their platforms for whatever reasons. So
Yep.
I'm not sure exactly. So because the this is like this is like a complement product to like all the AI things, right? Because you need data, you need hardware, you need algos, you need people, you need like cross-platform compatibility to do all your AI stuff. And Datadog is probably more on like the data service management kind of things. They are not generating the data for sure, but they are definitely on the data service management thing. So you have to kind of look at like their main competitors are quite big, because even like Microsoft is doing this kind of data management things. So it's not exactly like Microsoft don't do it. It's not exactly like Apple, Google don't do it. They are all doing it. And these are you are kind of like a small mid cap competing with like a mega big cap in terms of that. And the mega big cap might just copy your features or whatever, or the other play is that they buy over your company, which is good. Yeah. So it depends on how you look at things and what. Ultimately, I'm not sure whether Datadog is profitable now, but there's another thing to consider, because if you're not profitable, then you have to look at how is your revenue growing at the rate that is worth it, or is there like some kind of end game in the process of you losing out on all this money and things like that.
Yep. Okay, this one I also don't have a view, but I think need to spend some time to understand the features and their competitions. If not, very hard to own companies that we don't understand in details. Okay, next one. ENPH, ENPH dropped a lot. You think solar is competitive industry and it can maintain its growth? Do you see any threats to their growth other than macro? Have you mentioned about this before? I think we should ask another friend of us, right? You have any opinion on this, ENPH?
Not really, because I don't really buy this area or read up a lot on this area. I just have a generous idea, which is that it is fast moving tech, and a lot depends on like how they make their solar panels, because there are apparently many different ways of making solar panels with different rare materials and things. So obviously if you invest a lot in making something a certain way, and then some new tech comes along that makes it in another way but cheaper, then someone else invests in that, then you on a cost materials basis, you are losing out already in that idea. So it is, if you want to get into it, there is definitely money to be made, but you have to be aware of all these things. Then there's also the completely blue ocean thing, which is that what if someone just did some nuclear power fusion thing that takes over the next 10 years, and then a lot of it will be based on what is your valuation really, right? Because if your valuation is very high, then you are expecting that you stay in it long enough that you can gain back the valuation kind of things. But if your valuation is lower, you can think that maybe I'm just in this stock for the next 5 years or something, and think about that lah. I mean, what I speak of is more like general. I don't know anything about ENPH, and I cannot really comment on it, or like what is his supply chain or process or whatever things like that, as like how I do with NVDA or the tech stuff. So but in general, this is the kind of things that are, when it comes to materials and it comes to producing things in energy related areas, this is how I look at it.
Yep. Okay. YCX, when is the time that you will do a rotation to your portfolio from tech to energy or energy to tech? By the way, right now, is what kind of allocations between these two? Is it like half-half, or is it like more energy than tech?
My energy is, I mean, I'm not just energy, I'm commodities, energy, and also like niche monopolies, I would say. Yeah, I invest in niche monopolies, energy, commodities, and mainly I have been, previously it was like 15-20% on like energy and commodities. I don't really like differentiate between them. I didn't go see. The thing is that I find that this is a different, I mean, from my own experience over the past few years, is that because the interest in it is not as high, they cannot really look at them from the same way as you look at tech in terms of valuations and things. So a lot of it is also determined on like the dividends that they pay out. That means like what is their payout ratio and how much of it is doing. And because these energy companies, from what I focus on, is that they more or less already have their capex there, and they are quite entrenched in like where they are supplying their demand, where they are supplying their demand, their customers, that kind of things. It's not really like they are gaining more customers or that kind of things. It's more of like they are selling more or selling less, then they are reacting to it. Or there's the occasional like build more pipelines, or like like create another oil rig, that kind of things. But then those are like, it's not that common. So it's just that as to whether like I do a rotation, is that, I mean, I've really been rotating for the past 3 months, right? When NVIDIA is up, I sort of like sold off like 30% of it already, and the money is sitting there in cash, and also I'm allocating more towards energy, commodities, and all these niche industries. But in terms of like another experience that I learning point is that less on buying the commodities itself and more on buying like the companies that are generating the commodities, because I think that is more of like a safer and higher return over time kind of deal, because the commodity price itself is very it can be gamified, because there are all these countries with interests, and they can just change the price based on like how they limit or expand their output. They can afford to take losses on their balance sheet and whatever things, but the for countries wise but for companies wise, they are more like predictable and reliable, and they have like a profit oriented motive, right? So you can kind of see that they do actually generate returns over time because of their directive. So I have mostly moved out of the commodities that I buy. Like most of it at a loss actually, but I have instead bought like the companies that produce these commodities more, because I think from a risk appetite perspective and from a profit perspective is a stabler choice, and also a better choice for a portfolio allocation compared to just buying the commodities.
Interesting. I think, yeah, for those who are watching, I think YCX is more like more fluid in terms of the implementations. So I think you are still watching on all this trend from time to time and adjusting accordingly, right? So for those who don't follow YCX like quite regularly, you might lost like what is he doing? Like could be like looks like something like it's trading, but actually not really, right? It's more like really playing with the allocations and study the trend at the same time now. So I think, yeah, worth to find out more on the process. Maybe don't follow the trades follow the thought process will be a lot more useful moving forward.
The other thing is that I kind of view energy and tech as like complements, and also like they are complements. Complements means that if one goes up too high, the other will go down. If the other goes up too high, the other will catch up, whatever kind of things. Because if you think about tech in the most raw sense, is that tech is about using vast amounts of energy to automate or to do little amounts of work so that the human can don't do any work kind of idea. So in order to have a tech industry, you need to have a strong energy industry as the fundamental or basis, because if you cut out the electricity, there's no tech at all. Literally no tech if you have no energy. That's it.
Yep. Low correlations, always a good thing. Next one, YCX, you think for semicon, it's more difficult for China to duplicate NVDA or TSMC, meaning design of semicon or the manufacture of the semicon? Interesting questions.
More difficult to duplicate NVIDIA actually, but even TSMC is hard enough already, because the idea is that you have to understand that the whole semicon industry is a whole supply chain, and that the supply chain, right, is it starts from it's the whole thing. It's not just the hardware, it's actually the software as well, because the software determines how the hardware will change. It's just like you see ChatGPT came out, and then you see all these generative AI thing come out. Then you start to see that, hey, all the data centers start to think, hey, we want to buy all this AI hardware, because then you start to see that everyone start to produce all these AI hardware. You see, it was just a software change, and then suddenly it leads to so much hardware change just for that software. Then for China, is the same thing, is that you have to, as China, and let's say you are the country leader and you're trying to build out this thing, right? It is the whole supply chain that you have to build out. Not only do you have to just build out, it's not just enough to build out the hardware itself. You have to actually have domestic users using your own coding, producing your own things, producing your own monopolies or hardware, or your own software that is better than the competitors. That means better than what the USA companies are putting out, right? And then you build the whole thing around that, and then this feeds into your own supply chain, the hardware, that kind of thing, to do it. Otherwise, you see that the Chinese, because as capitalists, you are still really you are profit oriented and you are realistic. You know that if your local machines are not doing the same thing, you definitely buy the foreign machines to do the kind of work that you want to do. It's just let's say you are making donuts, and Singapore doesn't have any donut factory, doesn't have any donut machinery expertise, right? You definitely go and buy the donut machinery expertise from Germany or something, right? Because you want the best machine to produce the quality donuts or whatever. It's just that kind of idea. So that is the kind of things that China has to deal with, because they have to do up the software at the same time they have to do up the hardware, and then they have to do it up rapidly. It's not like we are going to do this in today, that kind of thing. It's more like a whole cycle of it, and your cycle speed must be faster than the West cycle speed. So once your cycle speed is faster, right, the means the rate of refresh is faster, right? Then you have a possibility of catching up. If you don't have that cycle speed, and that cycle speed begins at the research paper area, because your country must be putting out the academics, the research paper that demands that kind of software, that software then demands that kind of hardware, and then the hardware drives the kind of thing. That whole dynamic has to be faster than the West, and then you have to get, and then it's that you are again competing against the global stage. It's not just enough for the domestic. Domestic has to be strong, but then you also have to influence the countries that are surrounding you or they are very close with you to actually also take up your side of this cycle, right? Then you can have that kind of ability to snowball faster than the current incumbents that are in place. That is how I look at it. And no matter how fast you are, it's definitely going to be, from now speaking, it's definitely going to be over time, over the next at least 2 to 10 years kind of thing. It's not going to be overnight or over a year or over 2 years things. It has to be competing and spending a lot of resource. That means a lot of capital on the country's perspective to subsidize, to push in this kind of area to compete and then in order to generate this kind of industry. It is like that one. There's no way around it, because this is a whole like society or cultural academic effort all at once. Mm.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. I like the part that you say about the software hardware integrations, right? Because I'm watching like companies like Apple closely also because of their software hardware integrations. Now we are talking about this kind of software hardware interactions at the industry level, right? Which is very complicated. But your point is very, very interesting. And I have one question. Have you looked at this company called I think his name is Byron from China? I think they are doing similar stuff as what NVDA is doing, but then since this all this crackdown that have been imposed by the US, it seems that they will have some problem. But before that, right, it seems that they are doing some stuff that is quite similar to NVIDIA, and it's not that far behind, right? Or even you can even claim that they are on par with NVIDIA. Have you looked at this company?
Yeah, I have, and honestly, they're not really a factor right now. It's not competitive at all. I mean, they're still catching up while Nvidia is really looking at expanding markets really. So it's not really, it's just like, it's kind of like it's kind of like there's so like those phones that are coming out that's like made by those small things that small companies that are doing. They will have their niche, and they will have some customers, but it's usually just leftovers from the things. I mean, again, it's the whole cycle thing, whereby if they are able to cycle faster, they are able to cycle faster than Nvidia, then they have a shot lah. If they are not able to cycle faster, then people in the end will still go with the one that has the most support. Yeah, in terms of everything. Because not only that, because even from a company perspective, if you buy the unknown ones, right, your resale value of the unknown ones is also way worse. That means, let's say your company is shutting down, right, or whatever, because of whatever things, and you want to sell off your assets, you'll find it more difficult to sell off all these equipment that nobody really uses, because then compared to selling off like equipment that is really the industry benchmark kind of things that you can still sell and recoup at a loss, or whatever things it is. It's just that which that's why there's always the trend to go with the incumbent that has the most variety support. It's just also the same thing with phones, right? The iPhone always sells at a higher resale value, is always higher than all the other phones out there because of these kind of reasons. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, I think we are almost to the last questions already. I'll comment these two together. Hello Bunti, can I have a coffee with you one day? Just reach out to me, PM me on Telegram. We can schedule something if you want to meet one for one. I think can be arranged as long as we both are free. And then this one, writing on the questions on drinking coffee with Bunti, maybe Bunti can consider organizing a meetup session with people in the chat group. Yeah, this one I think can plan. Like breakfast during weekend. I think we can plan something, right? It's just that last time when we have this this shareholder podcast group, right? We say we are going to meet up for lunch, and then we blast it out on the the YouTube community sections, right? Also, nobody turned out, right? It's just like 4 of us plus one of my friend lah. So sometimes I thought that people will want to like join for coffee sessions, right? But then when I go organize, my fear is that, let's say if nobody coming, right, it will be quite weird, So let's say anyone is very interested, right, to organize something like this, right? Maybe you can let me know. So at least we had 2 persons. Then the rest, whether they want to join or not, up to them lah. So we can of course organize something like this. So I will reach out to you, Jay, on this. And then the last one, I think this one also I'm interested to hear comments from YCX. What would you like to ask Warren Buffett if you have a chance to meet him?
Like, how was his day? What wishes does he have before he dies? I mean, there's nothing much to ask him, in the sense that, there's nothing much to ask him from my perspective.
Okay.
I don't really think of it as like it's just about that.
Yeah, actually, like so many, all these legendary investors, right? Warren Buffett, I also is not like my top list that I want to meet him. The reason is simple, is because I've watched his, like the shareholder meetings for many years already. So I kind of like know what, how and why he's thinking about some topics. I mean, not to the specific, at least on his philosophy. I read his book. I know roughly him as a person. So even he sold TSMC, right? I'm not really super curious to know why he's selling, because I kind of know why he's done that now. So that's why I also don't have a particular specific questions that I wanted to ask him now. So yeah, that's my answer on these questions. Okay, I'll say thank you so much to YCX for helping me co-host these sessions. Without you, it's very solo and very hard for me to do it one person. Thank you so much for. I mean, this week we have long list of friends here. You guys are here. Thanks a lot for tuning in live. I'll put on the recording later. Thank you so much to all, and hope you all enjoy these sessions lah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for hosting. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.